several,
Yeah.
and it was Moses, and then Caiaphas was like my second one. And I'd written, at least some notes for both. So when you said the first one, I was just like, I'll go with the second one. It's probably better.
You got to watch out for those out of the box answers. Some guy argued about "Joy of the World" or something about the Christmas song. That was just ridiculous.
And some fella took home 2 points for just that one answer.
Yeah, and
somebody killed it on that answer. Somebody had the judges rolling on the floor laughing with that answer because they saw the reaction on your faces.
He wasn't laughing, was he?
No, he was. We had to take a more than 10-minute. I think a 15-minute break to let him and Brother Dalkey calm down after that. So. All right, welcome back to the Great Bible Challenge. We're now starting Season 3. This is our first episode getting back after a long break due to some things going on at the beginning of this year. But we're excited to get back into the competition. And for it, we have one returning competitor who has also been a judge. And he has brought with him two colleagues of his, I don't want to call them friends, I don't know if I actually like you or not, but two colleagues of his who are both also graduates from the same Bible college. So they've all come out of Landmark Baptist College in Haines City, Florida. And so all of them are having an unofficial competition of the students there. And so you guys will compete. Whoever wins will get two other competitors from the college to come in. And we'll just keep doing this till we find out who's the best student to have ever graduated from Landmark. I'm joking. I tried to do something with another college similar, and we may try to do it again, especially now that I know that Brother Morgan's brother is there, and he might actually want to get in on competing. But I'll go ahead and introduce everybody. We have Brother Samuel Morgan. This is, of course, the son of Brother Jim Morgan, who is the missionary that led my wife to Christ, and he grew up there in Romania with his father there, and now is the assistant pastor at Liberty Baptist Church in Lyons, Georgia. And so he has competed before, and he's also been a judge in the past. So this is his chance to come back in, and he's supposed to be trying to seal himself a solid victory today. So I don't know if he picked you guys for that reason or if he actually thought you would be good competition. We'll find out. And then for our other two competitors, I'll go from the direction you are on my screen. I have Brother John Tiberi. Brother Tiberi is the operations manager, the director there for the printing ministry and all that works with that at Landmark Baptist Church in Haines City, Florida. And then we have Brother Mark Mariner. Brother Mariner is missionary to Suriname with BIMI, and he is, I guess, currently on deputation at this point or doing training or something.
We've done a 1-year internship in Guyana, and now we're just back to have a baby and then go to Suriname.
Okay. All right. Then Brother Mariner is on his way there. And today we have, as a special honor, the first time judging, the thorn in every judge's side, the man himself, the myth, the meme, the legend, Brother Chad Branch is going to be our judge today.
Glad to be here. So happy to be here, Brother Haley. God bless you, my brother.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We'll have no branching out since you're actually, no pulling a branch because you're the judge. So you can't throw a tantrum on yourself when you don't like the judgment. But we'll be doing the same system we created at the end of last year, wherein we have two judges. The reason for that is it gives, I think, a balance to things. We've been trying to incorporate that for a little while, but because of the point system and the fact that we have 3 different champions that are crowned every year, one for points, one for the polls, and one for the winning the competition overall, I couldn't just throw that out in the middle of the year, else it would have messed up my point system. So that's why we've waited till now. We introduced it with the championship because those points do go into this year. And from this point on, everyone who is being judged will normally have 2 judges unless it's a head-to-head challenge. In that case, it's different because there's already more points being given out anyways in that scenario. All right, with that in mind, we're going to go quickly into this with our questions. You'll notice the format is different because I am trying to minimize my editing and cutting and all the stuff I have to do on this. So it may not be as polished as what we tried to make the Bible challenges, but we're going to try to make it work tonight because I'm trying to find a better way to do these. So let me go ahead and give us the questions. Our questions for tonight are, aside from Mary, the mother of Jesus, who is the greatest mother in the Bible? Of course, asking this with Mother's Day in mind tomorrow. And then after Jesus, or Melchizedek, which priest had the greatest impact on Israel? Going with our theme in the Sunday midday services this month. And then who is the most underappreciated character in Hebrews 11? Of course, with our Wednesday night studies right now. And other than God commanding it, why is it important that children honor their parents? This going with our Sunday morning series. And then also our last question as well. Which story in the Bible best teaches us how to show honor? And so for this, we'll have our contestants going right into the questions. And we will start with Brother Morgan. He'll be the one to go first since he has competed before. He'll set the example. And then the other fellows will come in and hopefully kick him down a notch or something. So, all right, everybody's muted. Brother Morgan, I'll give you the question one more time. Who is the greatest mother in the Bible other than Mary, the mother of Jesus?
So the greatest mother, I believe, in the Bible, other than Mary, would be Hannah. Hannah is just such a unique story in the Bible, but I love the faith that she showed in God and how she handled Samuel when her son was born. To say the least, that turning over her son to the Lord is not an easy thing. But I think in 1 Samuel 1:26 says, and she said, O my Lord, as thy soul liveth, my Lord, I am the woman that stood by thee, praying unto the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord hath given me my petition, which I asked of him. Therefore also I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth, he shall be lent to the Lord. And he worshiped the Lord there. So we look at Hannah as a great mother. You say, well, she gave her child away. What she was teaching her child in her faith and in her trust of God was, look at what I know I trust God and I love him so much that I can trust God with you. She instilled in him, and we see in Samuel's life, his trust of God from his mother passed on. That was passed on, that he, like my mother trusted me with God with me, I can trust God with all of my problems, everything I face. She completely handed over her son, as crazy as it may seem, in trust of God. And I think that shows her to be a great mother.
All right. And then we'll go to Brother Mariner next. So, Brother Mariner, if you'll tell us your answer and then present it to us.
So I chose Eve as the greatest mother in the Bible. And I realized that people might immediately say, well, look at her children. One murdered the other. But for one reason I chose Eve is simply because her name and her position, she's the archetype of all mothers in the Bible. Her name means the mother of all living. But not only that, you have to remember that when she had her child, she did this without any help or example of any previous mother. And then because of that, she became the example to all. Paul used her as an example 3 times in the New Testament as a mother and a wife. And I can't help but think part of the reason my family is back in the United States right now is so my wife can have our second baby and be with her mother. But and it's still a difficult process. I can't imagine going through that with never having any other example and not having any help. Also, Eve raised Abel, who seeked after God. But then we also have Seth, and then her grandson were impacted. And it was after the birth of, I'm going to probably mispronounce it, but Enos, her grandson, that the Bible says, then man began to seek after or call after God. And so not only was her impact to her own children, it was to her grandchildren, and then down through the ages. And people have said, if you want to see your effectiveness as a parent, don't just look at your children, look at your grandchildren. And so that impact lasted for generations. And we could say even down to now that she's used as not just an example, but you could say the example of how to be a mother. And I just can't imagine, of all the people Paul could have used in the New Testament at his disposal, he picked Eve as an example and used her 3 times, not just once. And I think that, for that reason, she sticks out.
Right. He didn't believe me when I said I'd mute him or he can't hear me one. All right. And then Brother Tiberi, if you'll give us your answer.
All right. So my answer is Naomi. I believe is the greatest mother in the Bible because she exemplifies what a mother should be. Naomi is submissive to Elimelech, her husband. Naomi was taught her child to honor her parents, to honor the parents. Naomi didn't leave when the going got tough with the family. When there was a famine there as well, she didn't leave, go to somewhere else, but she kept the faith. Naomi decided that instead of living in Moab, she would travel back to her home. This journey was not by herself, though. It was along with her daughter-in-law, someone that she wasn't responsible for, but she took anyway to back home. And because of that, Ruth was entered into the godly line through David, because of Naomi's faithfulness to God and bringing her parental oversight in Boaz. And that's the end of my answer.
All right. Then I'll unmute you fellas. And for the time of the rebuttals, I'll not be muting you. Everybody will have an opportunity to just jump straight one from the next. And so, Brother Branch, if you're good to go on the rebuttals, you don't have any questions, you just give me a thumbs up and we'll be ready to go. All right, we're good to go then. So for the rebuttals, same pattern. We'll start with Brother Morgan, then we'll go to Brother Mariner, then Brother Tiberi. And so, Brother Morgan, you have 45 seconds, I believe we said, for the rebuttals, or 30 seconds? No, you have 30 to 45 seconds, whatever you would like.
Okay. The other answers are great, but I will again say you can look at either of those people and see some very negative results. I'm looking at the children of Eve. That again, brothers slaying each other, one slaying another. It's not a great picture of that. But also in Naomi, we see that they go off and yes, she was submissive to her husband, but we see the results and that come from that, which is great. And again, I go back to Hannah. She was able to completely turn her son over to God, and there's not one negative thing seen about her. We see even in the persecution she received of her husband's other wife, she still stayed faithful to God.
All right. And then Brother Mariner, if you want to take about 45 seconds to give your rebuttal.
All right. As regards to Hannah, obviously she's a godly woman, but I would argue that in her care for Samuel, she did not fulfill the expectation of a mother biblically. She actually, her decision to give Samuel to the priest was not commanded or solicited by God. That was of her own volition. Her choice in a adoptive father, if you would, was frankly a terrible one. It impacted Samuel. His own children did not walk after his own ways. So like Levi, his adoptive father, he did not father well. That could go back to reflect on Hannah's choice. And then Naomi, I see her as a picture more of grace than of how we should model. She even asked to be called bitter because she had bitterness and blamed her poor choices on God and the results of those choices on God rather than her own disobedience.
All right. And then Brother Tiberi, if you'll give your rebuttal.
So with Eve, Mark even mentioned it, that it was 2 or 3 generations after Eve that people started seeking God. And with Hannah, just like Mark said, that Hannah gave the priest her son to raise the son. Naomi, yes, she went back and was a little bitter, but the ministry, there's some times where it's hard. In the Christian life, there's some times where bitterness happens.
All right, then we'll bring Brother Branch back on. So, Brother Branch, because this is your first time judging, I'm going to let you actually go ahead and give the judgment on the first question as well. So you'll give your point, and then I'll come in and decide where I'm giving mine.
All right, all of you argued your point pretty well, but I'm going to go with Mr. Morgan with Hannah. I don't think that there's any greater attribute that you could show forth as a mother than faith, for one thing, but also I think about the love of a mother, and I think she just displayed both of those. Brother John, Brother Mark, you guys didn't do it good enough in your rebuttal. When your points against Hannah weren't good points, I don't think. Even though she gave Samuel over to Eli, and yeah, Eli had some issues, she wasn't really putting him in Eli's hands. She was putting him in God's hands. and no matter who the priest may have been. So your arguments just didn't hold up. I thought, Mark, you made a good point on Naomi in your rebuttal. You had good choices, but there just wasn't enough. As far as like Naomi, there's just not enough there to see. I think I would say if I had to pick a second, I would have picked Naomi, because to put up with Mahlon and Chilion, and their names mean whiny and piney, to put up with those two and have to raise them the best you could and find, good wives for them, I would have given points. But overall, my point goes to Brother Morgan with Hannah.
All right. Well, I'll come in with a slightly different perspective, because I actually thought that the rebuttal from Brother Tiberi I thought was quite good. I don't feel like the answer won me over for an answer, but I think the rebuttal, I'm actually rebutting Brother Branch on this. I think the rebuttal was quite good, actually, because you gave some very strong points against both of the other answers. And so I have a very different opinion of that, because I do think the dig of the fact that she didn't actually raise her son reflects on her as a mother, and I do think that should be taken into regard. So again, that's why we have two judges. You don't have to be upset, Brother Branch, but that's why we have two judges. I do think that should be taken in regard, but I feel like based on the way the answers were argued, I like my actual opinion of the answers, that I have to go with Brother Mariner, just because you brought a lot of Bible information to it. And that's one of the main things I look for in these answers, is the information being brought out from the Bible. And so you gave a lot of good numbers there. I almost docked you some points because you're going over on time, but I'll let it slide on your first time through. But you actually, I thought, did a great job bringing out the answer. And that's the thing about the Bible challenge for me. I'm not always looking for the answer that I would give. I'm looking for the answer that is best given to me. Because to be honest with you, I probably, of the three of these, Hannah was the first one came to mind, but I immediately backed away because she didn't raise him. Naomi, when you said it, I thought, well, that's kind of strange. But I said, no, that actually could be argued quite well if you get into her pushing her motherhood towards Ruth as a mother-in-law, and how she pushed her in the right direction with Boaz. But Eve was not one that even crossed my radar, but you brought it out very well. So that's where I'm going to land on this. That leaves us with Brother Morgan having 1 point, Brother Mariner having 1 point. So Brother Tiberi, you got to really kick it into high gear on the next one so they don't leave you behind. But
Sounds good.
All right. As we go into our second question, we'll be asking, after Jesus / Melchizedek, which priest had the greatest impact on Israel? For this one, Brother Mariner will be going first, then Brother Tiberi second, and then Brother Morgan last. So we'll go in that order as we rotate. And we're going to start by taking our judge, or at least our other judge, off the screen. And I'm going to mute everybody, and I'm going to ask Brother Mariner if you'll give us your answer to the question of, after Jesus, which priest had the greatest impact on Israel?
My answer to that question is that Caiaphas had the greatest impact on Israel. Obviously, this was a negative impact. Caiaphas was the high priest during the year and the time that Jesus died. And not only did he have, I believe, the greatest impact in two ways. In terms of time, it's the greatest impact. It's been over 2,000 years that the decision with which he set a precedent, which was rejecting Jesus. The Jews still to this day, over 2,000 years later, are rejecting Jesus. But also in the scope, obviously, some Jewish believers, which were the apostles, chose to follow Jesus. But as a whole, basically almost the entire nation, even to this day, has rejected Jesus. It's interesting. He was. There was another high priest, Annas, which was not at the exact time Jesus was a high priest. That was his father-in-law. But the plot to kill Jesus was hatched at Caiaphas's house. And then also the plot to cover up the resurrection, where they paid hush money to the guards, was from Caiaphas. And so he was the first among now, since then, the cover-ups, if you would, of the resurrection, the denials with the hallucination theory, the no burial theory, swoon theory, are all just following in the footsteps of what Caiaphas did. So for that reason, two things, time and scope. This negative impact, he had the potential to have the greatest impact of any priest, I believe. Imagine if the high priest not only
30 seconds.
Imagine he had accepted Jesus Christ and endorsed them as the Messiah. Caiaphas, interestingly, was one of the very first people to know that Jesus had resurrected because of the testimony, but yet he missed that opportunity and, in fact, had a negative impact rather than a good impact.
All right. And now I'm going to ask Brother Tiberi if you'll give us your answer to the question.
So my answer is Samuel had the greatest impact on Israel because there was really no other priest like him. He had such a great impact on Israel. Samuel, from a young age, was dedicated to the priesthood, even though he was not of the lineage of the priests. He was dedicated by Hannah. Later on, once he was weaned, Samuel, he was called from God at a young age, and he was called 3 times. And his phrase was, "Here am I," and that's used all throughout the Bible, and even in modern day Bible conferences and things like that. To answer the call of God to stand for their country, a call that is used all throughout. In every way that we went, God did not let, everywhere that he went, God did not let his words fall to the ground. There's no greater impact than one that is wrought of God. That is why in the book of Samuel, and we have 1st and 2nd Samuel, we have 2 books of the Bible that are named after him. We see in chapter 7 of the 1st book of Samuel, it says that he oversaw the revival in Israel. And he saw revival. He was one of the last judges before the kings. He anointed 2 kings in Israel, and he also slayed a king because Saul was not man enough to do it. So there's no other priest that did the same things he did.
All right, and then I'm going to ask Brother Morgan if you'll give us your answer to the question, though.
My answer is Aaron, and the reason because him being the first priest chosen as the priest for Israel, he had such a opportunity to greatly impact the nation, to greatly impact Israel, being that first person set in that position as high priest. But we see a great failure in him at the when Moses is up on the mountain, and just a shorter period of time. I mean, they've come out of Israel, they've been rescued. And in a short period of time, a matter of days, he has taken Israel back to worshiping the idols that they have just come out from the country that they were worshiping. 2 calves are made, and these idols are now being worshipped. And the whole victory, so much so that God had said, I want to destroy all these people. I'm done with them. I'm fed up with them. And had Aaron been able to stand up and be that positive impact, no, we can trust God. God's judgment or his desire of that, save for Moses standing between Israel and God, would have wiped out a whole nation before they even begun in that sense. And I think that's the reason why you can say that Aaron is the greatest, had the greatest impact on Israel.
All right, as we get ready to go into the rebuttals, I'm just going to ask real quick and make sure my other judge that he's good to go. All right, he says he's good. So, Brother Mariner, you got yourself muted. You got to unmute yourself real quick. And we're going to go into the rebuttals with Brother Mariner going first. So, as we said before, take up to about 45 seconds to give your rebuttal.
Okay. So, in rebutting the 2 answers of first, I have to say about Samuel that I believe his impact was very short-lived. It was only his lifetime. His own sons were rejected as leaders of Israel because they did not follow after him. So for time, it was a very short impact. And I don't believe it was an exclusively good impact. Samuel's impact actually potentially drove them to Saul. And it was only, the question was impact on Israel specifically. I believe more of his impact is more on believers today than exclusively Israel. Aaron, you mentioned it. There were problems with him. His own sons also were killed by God because they had a strange fire, and he allowed the golden calf. So he didn't have exclusively good impact either.
All right. And then Brother Tiberi.
So to argue Mark's point of Samuel picked the kings that God had told him to do. David would not have been picked if Samuel had chosen him. It wouldn't have been one of his brothers that were taller, better. Caiaphas, yeah, he had that impact because that's when God wanted it to happen. It was prophecy. For Aaron, he did the golden calf, and Jeroboam uses it to separate the 2 kingdoms so that they don't have to go over to Jerusalem and worship the people over there. So I think both of the other 2 are just irrelevant.
All right. And then Brother Morgan?
arguing impact. It doesn't say impact for good. I'm saying, how did this carry on in Israel? Like you said, I was going to bring up Jeroboam. Yeah, not only did he bring Israel about to disobey God at one time, but we're talking generations later. Israel goes back and they're like, "Oh, Jeroboam's like, well, I remember that Aaron. That's what Aaron's name carried was. Oh, he was the one who built the idols. So if Aaron did it, I can do this and lead Israel to disobey God again. It's not a positive impact, but it was a long impact, and it carried on. And we still see idol worship today in many places. Well, the impact carried on. His impact wasn't a good impact on Israel. Imagine what it could have been, but I think it was the greatest impact.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and have Brother
But bottom line
Branch.
first.
I'm going to get you to give your answer, and then after that, I'll come in and give mine.
Okay, I hate it when judges beat around the bush and try to make you drag out who they thought the answer was. I'm going with Mark Mariner. Caiaphas, I thought he made a really, really good point about, and I'm one of those sticklers about, look at the question, which priest had the greatest impact on Israel? And his point about the lasting impact and how it's lasted for all of these years, the decisions that he made under his watch regarding the Lord Jesus Christ, and things that are still even believed today among the Jewish people. If you look at that negative impact that has carried down through the centuries, the point that he made was very, very good. And so I'm not even, I mean, I could make comments about the other two. I thought that they picked good ones. I thought that there were, Samuel did have some good impact on Israel. Aaron, again, trying to argue the negative impact that he had, and I think he made a good point. But the rebuttals, Brother Morgan, you didn't bring a strong rebuttal. You just continued to support your own answer versus rebutting the other answers. So in the end, I went with Brother Mariner and Caiaphas.
Well, as I come into this, I think all of them are very good. I feel like I was being jerked back and forth each time somebody spoke, because I kept thinking, okay, well, that's actually a good answer. That's a good answer. I have to say that when he gave Caiaphas as his answer, because I'm not going to throw him under the bus and tell him what he gave originally. He gave a different answer, and I had to reject it. But when he gave Caiaphas, I had just sent this to Brother Hoffman and said, okay, this is the answer. This is the one I would argue. However, to be honest, I was very impressed by how the other answers were given. So I was actually expecting Caiaphas to win, and you did a fantastic job. And so I have no qualms whatsoever for you getting a point for that. I think you do deserve one. And so I'm glad that I let Brother Branch go first, because then I feel a little less guilty than about giving a point in a different direction, because that was definitely a point worthy answer. But I'm going to give mine to Brother Tiberi on this one, because also Brother Morgan's, it was very close. It was a point-worthy answer for sure, especially the generational impact with the idolatry. I think one of the things that held me back on that, and it wasn't really stressed much in the rebuttal, but I felt like you gave just enough of it that I could take it in terms of Brother Tiberi, is the fact that idolatry was in their heart already. It wasn't so much that Aaron put it there, as that he just didn't get in the way of it and stop them. It was what he didn't do, not what he did do. And that's, of course, a tremendous impact. That doesn't make your answer any less of an answer. It's actually a great answer and something great to preach. But I felt like some of the stuff that was brought out about Samuel and his impact with the kings, and how that he had that influence and power to determine whether or not David actually got to the throne. And then, of course, cleaning up the mess that Eli left him and felt like between the two, that's what I'm going to go with. So in that case, we're left with a very close skin of the teeth kind of competition on question number 2. But we're going into the third question. Brother Morgan, you have 1 point. Brother Tiberi, you have 1 point. Brother Mariner, you have 2 points. So Brother Morgan, you gotta come in and clean them up now. You got the experience here. No, you've all done good so far. All right, we'll take Brother Branch back off again, and we're going to go into our third question, which is, who is the most underappreciated character in Hebrews 11? So for our audience at home, and for the proper judging of this for the polls, this does have to be someone who did something worthy of appreciation, but is not very appreciated. Like, people don't talk enough about this or appreciate this enough. I'm saying that because at home in the polls, I don't want to have to say it in the comments on the day of the live video and have to rebuke people for not voting. I'm saying it so that you have the same qualifier as we do as judge. Excuse me. All right, as we go into this one, Brother Tiberi is going to be switching up to go first, and then Brother Morgan, and then Brother Mariner, you'll be going last on this one. So I'll go ahead and mute Brother Mariner, Brother Morgan, and then Brother Tiberi, if you'll give us your answer for who is the most underrated or underappreciated character in the book of in Hebrews chapter 11.
So my answer to this is Noah. Now, I mean, everyone knows who Noah is, but Noah is probably one of the most unappreciated characters in the book of Hebrews, I would say, is because we many times we just think of it as, I mean, me personally teaching in Sunday school class, sometimes I kind of come off of it as a story and not realizing what he had to deal with. He had to deal with, first off, the length and loneliness of his stand. Noah is called a preacher of righteousness. I believe that all of us here are somewhat of a preacher in some capacity. We all go to church with people that believe like us, but he only had 7 people that he preached to. I know preachers that have stood for 2 or 3 years and preached to their family and then left the field and quit because they were done with it. And Noah did it for 600 years. And he built a boat even though he didn't know what was happening, what was going to come. And yes, he was told by God to do it, but he preached nonetheless.
30 seconds.
Those years, and he stood for what was right. Also, his purity during that time. He lived in a wicked world. We live in a wicked world now, but that had to be way worse than what we are living in now. And there was only 7 other people who believed like him. So I could not imagine what it would be like for his stand there.
All right, then Brother Morgan, if you'll give us your answer.
So I chose for the most unappreciated person in Hebrews 11. I chose Barak, and I choose him because we don't hear about him very often. We don't think about him. Honestly, when we think of the passage that he's mentioned in, we more think of, well, one of 2 ladies, either one Jael, who drove a stake through a guy's head, or the prophetess Deborah, who came to Barak and said, "Go and conquer this nation. Go. Has not God commanded you to go and fight? Go to Mount Tabor and fight the army of Sisera there." And we see he says, "I'm not going to go unless you go with me." And we see a little bit of a conversation. Well, if I go, you won't receive glory. Or it won't be done in your name. They're going to say a woman did it. And it's interesting that though he doubted himself, I don't think this can happen. When it came down to it, he did do what was commanded. He did obey God. How often in our lives do we doubt ourselves and say, "Look, I don't understand it." But then we go forward and we see that God does a great work, even though we doubt it. We criticize people often because of that. But he trusted even in his doubt. He might have needed some encouragement, but he did go forward. And also, think about this. He didn't do it for the fame, obviously, because he was told, "You're not going to get any glory from this." He went out and did it anyways. He went out and completed the mission, completed the job, chased away this army that was invading. And we see a great delivery in Israel. A song is sung in the next chapter.
And then Brother Mariner, if you'll give your answer.
I chose for my answer Sarah. She's found in Hebrews 11, verse 11, and it says, "Through faith also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed and was delivered of her child when she was past age, because she judged him faithful who had promised." So she judged God faithful, able to do this. And the reason I say she's unappreciated, because most preachers, and not necessarily a fault with them, but we tend to emphasize the fact that Sarah laughed or that she doubted God when she was told. People forget that Abraham had the exact same reaction just prior when he received the news that he was going to have a son in his old age, and he fell on his face and laughed in Genesis 16. But Abraham is also mentioned there, of course, in Hebrews 11. He's used by Paul as an example of faith in Romans 4, also by James, illustrating faith that brings salvation in James chapter 2. But Sarah is his closest counterpart in having the same faith, is a partner in that faith. It says explicitly that she believed God, and because of that, it says, verse 12, "Therefore sprang there even of one, and him as good as dead, so many as the stars of the sky in multitude, and as the sand which is by the seashore innumerable." So the promise of the Messiah came through her, And we might say, well, despite her faith or because of her husband's faith, but it says in Hebrews 11, because of her faith in God. Yet, as preachers, and we tell the story, she's almost always viewed as a person who had a lack of faith. Remember, she had faith to follow her husband to a land she didn't know where it was. Can I just say, as someone in ministry, I appreciate my wife, that she's everything I do, it's
Time.
also hers.
All right, we're going to go ahead and go into the rebuttals then. And for the rebuttals, I'll ask my other judge, Brother Branch, are you good to go? Or okay, Brother Branch is good to go, so we're going to go into the rebuttals. And I believe, Brother Tiberi, you'd be first on this one.
So, for Barak, yeah, I agree that he got the job done, but he did it after some convincing. God had to convince him to do the job. Not a lot of the other judges needed that. There were some others that seek signs, but they didn't want a woman to go out there and help them out in the thing. He didn't kill the king or the person that was leading the army. For Sarah, she had faith, but yeah, like you said, Mark, she laughed. She laughed when God said that something was going to happen when she was going to have a child in her old age. Noah didn't balk at it. He went out there and did it for the time that he needed to.
Right. He
spent time on the boat.
All right. And then Brother Morgan, if you'll give us your rebuttal.
So I understand Noah, and yeah, but as unappreciated, I wouldn't say he's unappreciated. He is very much appreciated for what he did as a great work. He did a great work. Yes, he did it. And we appreciate the trust that he put in God. We appreciate all that he did. There's no question that Noah had faith. There's no question. And Sarah, she's, again, one of the most, because, and maybe partially her ties to Abraham, but she is spoken of as a great mother. She's mentioned often in the Bible. She's brought up often. She is respected. But Barak, most of you throw that name out, and somebody might not even know who he is. They might mistake him for somebody else. But he is a great man, and he did a great work, and he's unappreciated for how he completed it.
Brother Mariner?
I have to repeat what Samuel just said about Noah. He's one of the most appreciated characters in the entire Bible, let alone Hebrews 11. We have children's song about him. We put his boat, his ark, on the wall of the nursery. And so to say he's unappreciated, I'm sorry. I just have to say he absolutely is. Barak is one of the judges. Obviously he's not as well known, but definitely appreciated. But then as far as perhaps you're ascribing to him more credit than he deserves. Obviously, I believe you did say something about the fact that he lacked in faith, but then went ahead anyway. Well, that just supports my argument that Sarah, in despite, of odds, still had faith, even though she had a lack. But Barak, he didn't, in the end, it was a woman that helped him, he didn't do it.
All right, for this, we're going to do a second set of rebuttals on this question. And so we're going to start again with Brother Tiberi, if you'll give us your rebuttal for this.
So to start off with, a lot of what we've said about Noah, that he is appreciated by songs and things like that, is I think we sing nursery rhymes about things too that we appreciate, and we kind of lessen it. I feel like by making songs for children or just viewing it as a story. Barak didn't really do much other than save the nation for a little bit, and then they served idols a little bit farther down the line. Sarah was kind of led by Abraham. She was just following her husband, having faith that her husband had.
All right, and then Brother Morgan?
I would agree with, he was talking about Sarah, her faith, she had plenty of reason to believe. So the fact that she doubted is probably another reason we recognize her as much as we do, and disappreciate what she did, her lack of faith. And again, Noah, I hate to beat a dead horse, but he's probably one of the most, and I realize in Sunday school, but I have heard dozens and hundreds of messages probably on Noah and the ark, and even before and after. But Barak, again, that the fact of obedience, though in doubt, I think many of us can relate to that.
All right, and then Brother Mariner?
I just have to rip into Noah again. I mean, the question was, who is the most unappreciated? He's the most, probably one of the most well-known characters, once again, in the entire Bible. Everyone understands the impact that he had. The human race wouldn't be here without him. We recognize that. To say that because we don't maybe appreciate everything he went through, I've heard, like as Samuel has said, many sermons on this. Barak also, he didn't, I have to agree with what John just said. He didn't do a whole awful lot. 2 women had to help him out in a situation. And in Judges, it even says the honor's not going to go to you. It's going to go to someone else because you don't deserve the honor, is basically what he was told. And so I think that's pretty conclusive.
Time. All right. Now, Brother Branch, my question for you is really important. Do you think that any of these characters are unknown to Brother Dalkey's second grade Sunday school class? That's how we're going to have to measure this today.
Obviously not. They probably have had an entire 13-week series on Barak. And so, yeah. So I'm sure.
I'll make sure Brother Dalkey watches this to get this.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for him to put that out. I'm sure the Sword of the Lord is going to publish that and put it out for publication, the 13-week series on why Barak was such a great guy. So.
All right, brother. I'm going to put you in the hot seat again by letting you go first. So if you'll give us your judgment on it.
This came down to 2 answers, and it's between Noah and Sarah. And I am going to go with Noah because of the way it was answered. I really like the angle, Brother Tiberi, that you brought into this, in that Noah is unappreciated from the standpoint that he is no more than a little children's story, a little children's song. He ends up, he has his own little toys in the nursery, but the level of respect for him for what he did in being the only man on the planet at that time that God could find grace in and was living for God, that he literally raised 3 boys for God in the midst of that and managed to find 3 girls to marry them, is never talked about. All he ever gets talked about is the animals, the boat, and it's all the little stories and stuff like that. So based on the way that you answered that, then that's where I'm going. I'll give Brother Tiberi the point for Noah. He's appreciated, but the way you answered it, he's not appreciated in the way he should be and the respect that he should be. So I had to go with that.
All right. Well, as I come to it, I do think it was a very bold strategy. I think it's interesting because I know normally when I'm having to give my answer to a question like that, I'm the last one getting to pick. So I've got to get really creative a lot of times. And so sometimes it pays off for me, sometimes it does not. And so while I do agree that you've argued it very well, I do feel like there's an answer that holds more to like what I'm looking for in this. And so for me, I'll be going in a different direction. I have to say that it's fine, Brother Branch. It's okay. That's why there's 2 judges. But I do have to say that both of the other 2 answers were really kind of pushing me back and forth. I had actually just preached, this will date the video for people in my church of when it's being recorded, but I just preached on Sarah last night. And so I was leaning that way going into it because I literally just preached myself on the fact that she's underappreciated. But I do have to say that this was one of those where if you argue Barak right, and some of my fellows here will know what I mean by that, it's hard to lose with this one, in my opinion, on this question, because of the fact that I look at my perspective. I was not a Christian growing up, and I knew almost nothing of the Bible. I literally knew that there was a guy who got ate by a whale, that there was Noah. I knew him by name. I knew Sarah by name because a children's book my grandmother had. But it's something that, like most anybody knows those characters, they do get some degree of appreciation. Yes, she takes a back seat to her husband. I do feel like that's a great injustice to her as a character. And that's literally, I just preached it myself. You did a great job presenting it as well. And yes, when it comes to Noah, there's so many things with him, like most characters in the Bible, that they get boiled down to a children's story when there's so many incredible things happening there. But I think just in my personal, what I'm looking for this in the question, Barak is the answer, because he's someone who most people have no idea who he is. They don't know the story. I do think, though, you almost made it, Brother Mariner. I think you were the one that brought this out in the rebuttal. You almost made it impossible for me to choose it. Because of the fact that you brought, I think it was you, one of you did it, brought it out that God himself said that you're not going to get the glory for this. So of course he's not going to be appreciated when God said that. But I do think just in what I'm looking for in the question, I still have to go with it, even though that was a tremendous rebuttal. I mean, it's one of the better rebuttals you could give to anything like this. All right. So going into the next question, we're going to be looking at the question of, other than God commanding it, other than the fact that this is a commandment, why is it important that children honor their parents? And so for this one, I've asked each of our competitors to pick something very specific, other than just, hey, God told us we have to do it, so we have to do it. So give us, some reasoning, whether it's practical, spiritual, whatever, just some reason why we should do this. And now we're cycling back to, because we're actually tied up across the board, so we're cycling back to the normal, wherein Brother Morgan will go first, and then Brother Mariner, and then Brother Tiberi. And so I'm going to take our judge off of the screen, and I'm going to let you fellas go right into this. So, Brother Morgan, if you'll give us the answer to the question of, other than God commanding it, why is it important that children honor their parents?
So my answer is in Ephesians 6:2 and 3, it says that thou mayest live long on the earth. And some people may say that's a bad argument to argue, but it's not. There's a great the Bible in Ephesians says it is the first commandment with promise, and that promise we think about our lives on earth, and honoring our parents is obviously a key. According to the Bible, that is a key to a long life on earth. And it says, "Will be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth." And maybe that's just because you should listen to your parents for common sense. Don't do that; you're going to hurt yourself. But there's also a reason to live long on this earth. As a Christian, it should be. It's a hard desire maybe to have, knowing that we're going to heaven when we die. But I think of Paul saying, it's more need for me that I be here than to go to heaven. And as Christians, this earth has need of Christians who will live a long, godly life, honoring their parents, showing the world what it is to honor their father and mother, and then living a life that honors God, that reaches the lost. Because the longer the candle burns of our life, the more opportunity we can show it to people and shed the light on people and share the gospel and reach people. An opportunity is born through having long life. And that's why I think it's so important why we should honor our parents. And that would be one reason that our lives may be long and we can have a long life to honor God.
All right. And I'm going to ask then that Brother Mariner, if you'll unmute your microphone because you've muted it yourself, if you'll unmute and then give us your answer to this question.
So the answer I chose is that honoring our parents is an illustration of our relationship with the Heavenly Father. Basically, our entire relationship between a child and their parents, or their parents with their children, it's a spiritual truth that God is our Heavenly Father, and we're to illustrate that. And in the context that Samuel just mentioned, Ephesians 6:1, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And he goes on, but Ephesians 5 talks about how the husband-wife relationship is a picture. And when that is right, we're walking as light. Ephesians 5 says, for you were sometimes darkness, but now are ye light in the world. Walk as children of the light. When we walk as we are supposed to walk, when we honor our parents the way we're supposed to, we're a better light or a witness for Christ. And one of the most damaging things spiritually, and many have attested to this, is when the father-son relationship is not right. And so when we're able to have it to be right and we honor our parents, we're a better witness of the gospel spiritually. We're a living illustration of the gospel that God is our Father.
Okay. And then I'll ask Brother Tiberi if you'll give your answer to the question.
All right. My answer to this is they benefit from the wisdom of the parent. Proverbs 6, verse 20. It says, my son, keep thy father's commandment, and forsake not the law of thy mother. Bind them continually upon thine heart, and tie them about thy neck. When thou goest, it shall lead thee. When thou sleepest, it shall keep thee. And when thou awakest, it shall talk with thee. Simply put, the parent has had more life experience than the child. The parent has lived long enough to see what character a person should have and what teaches someone to have that character. They have the wisdom to know who is a person that their child should be around or not be around. They have the wisdom to place and enforce rules on the child, not to punish them, but rather the opposite, to keep them safe. The child then benefits from these rules later in life when the rules properly applied act as a guide in their actions. The child also builds upon and deepens the wisdom that is imparted to them when they get older and teach their children the wisdom that they were taught. It gives them a firsthand understanding of and how and why it should be applied.
All right, and as we go into our rebuttals, I'm going to let Brother Morgan, if you'll go first.
Again, to quickly, the importance of a good life, a long life, a life that honors. Look, we're talking about honoring Father. This is the first commandment with promise. What is the promise? That your life, there's significance to that God emphasized that this is emphasized in the scripture. I don't see that emphasis in the other argument, the childhood benefits from the wisdom of a parent. Well, you can benefit from the wisdom of a parent when you disobey them because you find out it hurts, or you find out the negative of your disobedience. So there you can learn that way too. And so again, the honor of parents we're following is God's rule, but there's a reason behind it. There's purpose. There's a promise.
All right, and then Brother Mariner.
So as far as honoring your parents to live long, I have to say that's just a selfish reason. I do realize that is what God says, that it's a promise there. But if that's our only motivation, that's a very selfish, I would say even shallow motivation. The motivation that I gave, that we're a witness, you kind of said that it's not emphasized there. I believe it fits exactly with the flow and emphasis of the passage. He says, masters, how they're to walk, husbands and wives, how they're to walk. And he talks about all these relationships. And the common thread there is that they're all a picture of how we are to be towards God, or God is to us. And so to say that that's, I think you're just wrong there to say that it doesn't fit, or that's not the emphasis of the passage.
All right, and then Brother Tiberi.
Yeah, so for the honor thy father and thy mother, that you're going to live long, it goes along with the commandment. It's a promise. If I go tell a first and second grader that if they sit in their seat, they can get the quiet seat prize or get some candy, I'm telling them if they sit there quietly, I'm going to give them candy. Now, for Mark's part, the illustration of our relationship with God, everything can apply to that. Us living a certain way can apply to everything. The armor of God, whatever it may be, it's kind of weak to do that.
We can't.
You need another rebuttal, or?
No, I'm good.
We didn't hear
Okay.
you. You were muted.
No, I'm good.
Oh, I was muted, or?
Your mouth was moving, but no words were coming.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not
at
muted.
least
I didn't
on my
unmute
side.
me or anything.
On my side.
Oh, well, I didn't mute anything, so I'm not sure what happened there. All right, then Brother Branch, we'll get you if you'll give us your judgment on this one first.
Okay, all of you did a really good job. I think all of you picked good answers. I am going to go with Brother Mariner, the illustration, how it illustrates our relationship with God and being a better witness. The question is, why is it important that children honor their parents? So we're looking at, of the three answers that you gave, what would be the most important reason for honoring their parents? And I think if I just had to rank them, I would definitely be that to illustrate our relationship with God. And then you made a good point with me, Brother Mariner, on the father-son relationship, because it hit home with me. For all of my teenage years, I had a terrible relationship with my father, and I was backslid and was a terrible witness. But as soon as I got right with God, I got right with my father, then my witness was much better, and I exemplified the walk with God. And I think certainly more than living long, some people don't live a long life, but they're a great witness. You take was it David Brainerd? Was it David Brainerd lived a very short life, but yet he was able to be so effective and just to have more opportunity. I understand that argument. And then the wisdom was good. I thought bringing in the Proverbs and bringing that in from that angle, I thought you did a really good job there, Brother Tiberi. But I'm just going based on looking at the question. If I had to take your three answers and say which of those three, all of them are good reasons. But if I had to pick which one is the most important, I would have to say because it illustrates our relationship and our walk with God and our witness to others.
Yeah, I have to have a similar viewpoint on this because it's really kind of tough. It's I'm down to I think the same two that I'm still trying to pick between is what it seemed like you were two. Your two were. I think that Brother Morgan, you had a good answer, but I think they took such a hard swing against you when they brought out if that's your only reason it's selfish. That it was because it was a good answer just on the grounds that like, well, when God gave you a reason, this was the reason. So I mean it's a good answer on those grounds because God said it. It's a good reason. But when you throw in that if it's your only reason it's selfish, then it's a really good rebuttal for that.
Yeah, that was a good rebuttal.
And then the same thing like with honoring God and wisdom, I think both of those answers are right there kind of hand in hand together. It's very close for me. I was at points leaning each way, and even right now I'm still kind of torn on what I should do on this one. So knowing that we're tied up and that Brother Mariner, you've already got 1 point, I think because it's very close for me, I'm going to lean the other way just because of that. If it had not been close, I would have definitely given you the point. But because it's a little bit close for me, I'm going to lean in and give it to Brother Tiberi. But Brother Mariner, you definitely have argued really good tonight on each one of these. So, I mean, I think I gave you your first point, so it's not personal. Sorry?
I said, now you're keeping the competition fierce. I like it. Going into the last
round. No, if it wasn't for the fact that there were some things said about wisdom, because I think your answer, like up front, is probably a better answer. But there were some things brought out about wisdom that stood out to me that held me locked in with that. So for me, it was one of those things. If I wasn't on the fence, then for sure, okay, no problem. I go with whoever I'm leaning toward. But because it's really right there for the fence for me, the only thing I have to kind of help me make a decision is the fact that, okay, you've got 1 point for this already. We'll give the other one this way. Otherwise, I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to do it to you just to keep the competition fierce. It's just because of the fact that I'm right there on the fence of the answers. All right, as we get ready to go into the last question, then, Brother Morgan, you've really got to dig yourself out of this because you have to have a clean sweep if you want to win. The other two fellas, we can't have a tie, or else we're going to have if you two fellas tie again like that, we're going to have to go into a tiebreaker. So somebody has to pull out either a clean sweep or, Brother Morgan, you at least have to steal a point away from one of these other fellas so we don't have to go into a tiebreaker. So that's your goal. You got to get at least 1 point in this. Two, if you want to win.
That's always my goal, like the whole time.
Well, I'm putting a little pressure on that goal this time because if you don't, then we have to sit here and record for longer. So, and I've got to come up with a tiebreaker question. I don't have one. So, it's on you. You have to save us all tonight by either pulling a clean sweep or at least getting 1 point. All right. As we go into this last question, we're going to be asking which story in the Bible best teaches us how to show honor. And there's some great answers given to this one. I may actually give my answer to this, not as argument, just at the end tell you what I would have said, because I still feel like there's a better answer that nobody got it. But there were some great answers given to this one, so I'm looking forward to hearing them. And for this one, normally the way we do this is whoever's leading in points has to go first. It is a tie. And so I think at this point we have to make a decision which of you two are going to go first. Either I just keep the pattern and Brother Mariner, you go first, and then Brother Morgan would go last, which is the way it would normally be. Or if you feel like it's not fair to you had to go second, you had to go first between the two of you in the first place, then I'll throw Brother Tiberi to it.
I mean, I don't mind. I guess I could go first.
Okay. All right, then we'll get Brother Mariner, you'll go first. So, Brother Branch, I'm going to take you down. All right, Brother Mariner, if you'll go first, I'm going to mute these other fellas, and you'll be answering the question of which story in the Bible best teaches us how to show honor.
So my answer to that question, what story best teaches us how to show honor? I picked the story of Abraham bringing tithes to Melchizedek. He's called the king of Salem there, and that's in Genesis 14. and 18 through 20. And he brought this as it illustrates our worship towards God. And there's kind of a little saying, put your money where your mouth is. So many people say they're worshiping God, or even that they're honoring God with their life, and they emphasize a lot of different things. They say, I don't do this, or I go to church, or I pray, or I avoid these wrong things. But can I say it this way? If you're not honoring God in your finances, you're not honoring God. Proverbs 3:9-10 says, honor the Lord with thy substance and with the first fruits of all thine increase. So shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses shall burst out with new wine. And then can I add, many people want to say tithing isn't for the New Testament church, or it's not a command. And because they say it's only under the law. Well, this story here shows us that it's not just under the law. It's a principle that we give the first 10% to God. And Matthew 6:21 says, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. If you don't put once again, you don't put your money where your mouth is, then what you're saying is just somewhat empty. And I see that in so many people. They point to their different actions, but they fail to honor God with their finances.
All right. And then I'm going to ask Brother Tiberi if you'll give your answer to this.
All right. So my answer to this is Joseph and his family. Since I could not use Jesus as an example, I figured I would find the Old Testament version of him. So I used Joseph. And it's really coming at it from an honor perspective, in a way that we don't usually view honor, as honoring someone that's hurt us or someone that's done us wrong. Joseph and his family, he was sold into slavery. He was sold away from them. He was away from them for many years. And really, he didn't have any, from a human perspective, he didn't have any need to honor them. But he was still their family. They were still his family. They needed him. And he gave them food. He provided food. He paid for their food. He gave them the money back that they had paid. And he even paid for, or he provided home for them when there was no food elsewhere. He moved them to Goshen. He sent Pharaoh's wagons there. He went personally to get his family and brought his family there. He even put his father, who was a shepherd, who was looked down on in the Egyptian place, and took him to Pharaoh, and he blessed Pharaoh. The father did. And it's an honor of hurting someone that had hurt him in the past.
And then Brother Morgan, if you'll give your answer.
So my answer is David honored Jonathan through his son Mephibosheth, and I use that because the honor is in a sense both. It applies to both Mephibosheth and Jonathan, but honor is easy to give to someone who is deserving of it or has earned it. We honor positions often. Well, he was a king. He was an emperor. He had the authority. There's a position that is honored, but honoring somebody who has nothing to offer. Jesus all the time was working with people that had nothing to offer. So in this, David is honoring by bringing Mephibosheth into his house, taking care of him, providing for him, giving back property that was taken, giving honor out that he would never see a return on. There was nothing, there was no personal interest. There's no, I'm going to benefit from this. It's going to help me politically. Honestly, it very possibly could have hurt him politically, considering who the grandson was. Look, your grandfather was trying to kill me. Your grandfather was chasing me. But because of someone I love, because of Jonathan and my love for him, I'm going to take you up. I'm going to bring you in. I'm going to honor you. You can't do anything for me, and you have no position, but let me do something. Let me show you honor.
All right. Let me check with my judge and make sure he's good as we get ready to go into the rebuttals. Okay. So we're going to go into the rebuttals, and maybe if it's something that feels more fair to Brother Mariner, I can switch your roles here, that in the rebuttals, Brother Tiberi will have to go first and you'll go second.
I would appreciate that if he doesn't object.
I'll do that since you had to go first on the question. So for the rebuttals, Brother Tiberi, I'm going to let you go first. You have 45 seconds.
Okay, so to start off with, Mark's is a good one, but he kind of argued it from the tithe aspect. And there's a lot of other verses that show us tithing and giving things to God. And right here, Melchizedek had done something for Abraham. In these verses right here, Jonathan had done something for David. David viewed Jonathan as an extension of himself, as if he was his own self, his own heart. And he loved Jonathan, and Jonathan was a close friend. And so he wanted to do this for Mephibosheth in lieu of Jonathan, as if it was his own kid, as if he had his own kid there bringing him to dinner. And right here, I view Joseph and his family as a different case.
All right. And then Brother Mariner?
I guess that I would attack the answer about Mephibosheth by simply saying David tried to give him a position of honor. And the reason I think my answer is just so much greater is because I believe the Bible emphasizes what is the best way to honor. It's to do it financially. We're to honor the pastor doubly with finances. We're to render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. Romans 13 talks about paying tribute to those that deserve it. And I think this Old Testament story illustrates all these things, that what is the best way to honor? We're to do it financially, not with, oh, I'm going to give you a position at my table, or I'm going to, for the sake of your father, I'm going to try and honor you. But I just think that this illustrates that.
All right. And then Brother Morgan.
Again, like John said, giving, sacrifice, offering to God was not something new. It had been commanded, it had been defended, it had been expected. I'll put it that way. It was expected. There were some laws, some things put in place for his honor, worship, sacrifice, and just the honoring of those who cannot benefit, cannot benefit you is just, it's a special type of honor to me, because I've seen it personally in our family when we've never been able to benefit a church that takes us on, but they honor us and they're trusting us and they're lifting us up to a special place, not because we deserve it necessarily, because we don't, but because they believe they're going to give honor. All
right, let us check in with the judge. Brother Branch, you've got an answer on this one, or you need?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, Brother Branch, I'm going to let you go first, and you'll be setting the pace for where this is going to go. Then, I guess.
Brother Morgan, clear winner on this one. Absolutely. I think that while the other answers were good, I think that I was looking for, Brother, right off the bat when you guys gave your answer, I was like, oh man, like Brother Morgan is rounding home. If this was a 100 meter sprint, he's so far ahead. I got to see Mariner and Tiberi like really crush him in the rebuttal, and you didn't at all. And so I looked up the word honor. The word honor is to confer an honor upon, give admiration and respect. The fact that David chose to do this, it was not for Mephibosheth, but it was honoring Jonathan and honoring what Jonathan had meant to him in his life, how Jonathan had stuck by him. This act that he did by Mephibosheth, it encompassed what you had, Tiberi, about. You talk about forgiveness, about the family of Jonathan and Saul, the things that happened. It encompassed that. Tithes. It even encompassed giving, Brother Mariner, because look, Mephibosheth had nothing. He was down in the land of Lodabar. He was wasting away. And the next thing you know, he's sitting under the king's table. He's living in the king's palace. So Brother Morgan took both of your answers, wrapped it up in Mephibosheth, and showed to me I think it's one of the greatest stories in all the Bible, to be able to show someone how that you can honor someone, how you can honor Jonathan. You got to take it away. He's not honoring Mephibosheth. He's honoring Jonathan in the act that he did. And I don't know of any greater thing you could do than to take this child of Jonathan who had nothing and to remember the covenant and the promise that he made with Jonathan. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. I mean, it's a home run. You won by half a mile. I give it to Morgan.
All right. Well, I'm a little bit different in that I think it was actually very close. I was very surprised and pleased with each answer. I think you guys did a fantastic job on that last question. I will say up front that as soon as I saw what answers were given, I said, oh, yeah, of course it's Mephibosheth and Jonathan, all of that. But once you guys gave your argument, it was very different for me. The one I said I'll give you that I was surprised nobody took it was David honoring the position of Saul as king, even when he was trying to take his life. Now, given the way Mephibosheth and Jonathan were argued, you still may have beat that one, but I think that was a good answer, at least in my opinion. But for the answers that were given tonight, I think you guys did a great job with them. I actually do really like bringing out the stuff about where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I do like what was given in each part of this. Each one I'm sitting there listening to it and thinking, okay, well, this is actually, if you pick this, this is good. If you pick this, this is good. I'm waiting for Brother Branch to see what he's going to do. But any of them, it would have been fine. This one, though, I do have to say I'm not really on the fence. Like if I had to say I was on the fence, it is close between Brother Morgan and Brother Mariner. But I am on the side of Brother Branch, and that I think Brother Morgan pulled that one off. So, Brother Mariner, it was very close. You came in. You came in like right there on the edge with every answer. If I hadn't give Brother Tiberi your other point on the last one, no. If I hadn't leaned to that side of the fence on the last one, we'd be going into a sudden death right now. But without that, though, the way we're going, Brother Morgan, you are the champion of the first episode of the third season. It's that experience you had paid off. Regrettably, I gave you 2 of those points, so I feel bad for that. But,
I will say this though, being rookies, I think Brother Tiberi and Brother Mariner did a really, really good job. They really understood the concept of this, and that is what somebody don't get. Look at the question, read the question, answer the question. Don't give us something else. Just answer the question. And I thought they did really good, and they brought Bible, good supportive answers, and they were very confident in the way they gave their answers. And I think that's very important too. I mean, if you come into this thing and you don't even believe in your answer, then that's a problem.
Yeah, I ran into the Hebrews 11 question thinking I didn't answer it the correct way, to be honest.
Well, I think right now some of you may be regretting giving a second chance to Brother Morgan to help him out, but I do think that last question really did seal up a good victory for you, though, and I think it's a good way to start off our third season. But you fellas did really do a fantastic job, and of course you'll be invited back to compete another time. Maybe you can come and get your revenge on Brother Morgan, or you can do like he did and bring somebody, to make sure you have a better chance of winning. Bring somebody new in and compete against somebody. Because that's what he did to you. He lost last time, so he had to bring somebody new in to give himself a better chance.
I had to bring, yep.
Yeah. Next time I'm throwing him against his brother, so that's my goal next time.
That'd be good.
I could get two siblings to do it.
Well, that's my goal next time, is make you have a family feud. This time we were trying to figure out who's going to best represent Landmark. Now we're trying to figure out who's going to best represent the Morgan household. So.
All right, you fellas. Get their father in and just only Morgans. So
well, see, that's how I'm going to divide their families. I'm going to let him be the judge, and then
that's me.
I like that.
He likes me, so I can't do that. He still considers me a friend for one reason or another, so I can't do that to him. No, with that said, though, fellas, you did a great job. I'd like to make sure all my guests have a chance to promote whatever kind of ministries or things you have that you would like to promote, as far as like online things where people can find messages from your ministry or your church or something that you're doing. And so I'm going to start with Brother Branch, because I do know you do some live streaming and stuff. So you also have some other things you may be interested in mentioning.
VBCDanville.com. You can get all the information about all of our ministries. We do broadcast all of our services live on our Facebook page, Victory Baptist Church, Danville, Virginia. You can look up any of those things. I just want to praise the Lord that just in the last 2 weeks, God has opened the door for us to get back in the juvenile detention center here in Danville. We were in there for about 12 years before COVID hit, and we kept beating on that door over the last year and a half, and just got back in. I am the chaplain there. I get to meet one-on-one with all the residents at W.W. Moore and for these juveniles, and we've already seen one saved, and I just want to praise God for that open door that God has given us there.
That's awesome.
All right. And then Brother Morgan, you have something for your ministry or church you want to mention?
Just we have we do our typical live streams, and we don't have a lot of digital outreach at this point, but it is something we have talked about and considered. So, but if you're ever in the area, we'd love to have you come visit. I'll leave that out there.
All right. And then Brother Tiberi, you want to bring something for you for Landmark, any of that?
Yeah. If you're ever in the Orlando area and we're a good church to stop by, also our live services can be found at landmarkbaptistchurch.org.
Okay.
Curriculum, nothing. Come on, man.
Got a Bible
If we went through all my
college.
ministry, it would be half an hour.
You could be promoting a Bible college here. There's so many things you could be advertising right now.
That is
I'm
true.
gonna tell Brother Morgan about this so that he can have a talk with you about not promoting the college. All right, Brother Mariner, you want to promote your ministry, where they can find out about your ministry there in Suriname, and anything else you have? That's fine.
I'll just shamelessly plug our family. The best way, honestly, is Facebook, because we keep that updated. So if you're against Facebook, I'm sorry. But just my name, Mark, the letter N, Emily, Mark and Emily Mariner, Missionaries of Suriname, will pop up. We just appreciate your prayers. You can read all about our updates. Right now we're on furlough, so I can even say that potentially, if you're interested in having us come, we are in the States for the next several months, so you could get in touch with me also about that.
Okay. And do you have a ministry website, or just you recommend through Facebook only on that?
Facebook is the best way right now, yeah.
Okay. All right. Then I appreciate you, fellas. We'll go ahead and get ready to close out. I will put a plug for us as well that, of course, if you're watching this, you know our YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like the video, comment, disagree with me, Brother Branch, whoever, it doesn't matter. Whatever you do, it gets some kind of engagement. It gets people to actually see the video. So you can say all the bad stuff about us. It's fine. Just make sure you interact with the video in some way to help that out. But I do appreciate you being here. Hope you join us for the next one next month, always the second Saturday of each month. All right. Thank you, fellas. And I appreciate you being here.